In the dimly lit living room of a modest suburban home, tension simmered beneath the surface as Brooke Anderson stared at the stack of bills on the coffee table. The sound of her husband Tim's voice carried from the kitchen, where he was arguing with his mother Linda. The walls of their shared space felt suffocating, echoing with unresolved conflicts and unspoken words. Tim had always been the peacemaker, but today his patience was fraying. "Mom, we can't keep covering the bills for everyone," Tim pleaded, his voice rising. "Nooning here." Brooke's heart raced as she caught snippets of the exchange. Tim's brother David, recently unemployed, had moved back in with his wife, Abby, and their 2 young children. The added financial strain was palpable. Brooke had hoped that marrying Tim would mean leaving behind the demands of his family, but instead they had taken on more responsibility than ever before. "Tim, it's family. We've always helped each other out." Linda's tone was defensive, wrapped in the expectations of her generation. Feeling trapped, Brooke stood up, needing a break from the suffocating atmosphere. She took a deep breath, but the smell of old furniture and the familiar scent of the family's dinner permeated the air, making her feel even more claustrophobic. In the chaos of caring for Tim's family and trying to establish a life of their own, her dreams had been sidelined. Brooke stepped outside for a moment, the cool evening air hitting her face like a welcome slap. She glanced at the neighbor's house, perfectly manicured lawns and peaceful families. She envied their simplicity, their ability to thrive outside the pressure cooker of family dynamics. But deep down, she knew this was her life. She was married to Tim, and their choices were intertwined with his family's expectations. "Brooke," Tim called, stepping outside to join her. The frustration etched across his face mirrored her own. "I'm so sick of this. We work hard, and yet we're constantly pulled back in." "We need to talk about moving," Brooke suggested cautiously, her heart racing at the thought of leaving everything behind. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. "I can't keep living like this." Tim's expression shifted from frustration to contemplation, his brows furrowing as he weighed her suggestion. "You really think that would work? You think they'll let us go that easily?" "I don't know, but we can't keep sacrificing our happiness for them," she replied, determination rising within her. "I want us to be free to start fresh, just the 2 of us." As the sun set behind them, casting a golden hue over the chaotic neighborhood, Tim finally nodded. "Let's look at options. I'll talk to my dad. Maybe he'll see our side." The decision hung between them like a promise of hope. A week later, in a small cafe buzzing with the chatter of midday patrons, Brooke and Tim sat at a corner table, the weight of their decision pressing down on them like a storm cloud. Tim stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, his gaze distant. Brooke, on the other hand, felt a swell of excitement and anxiety as they discussed potential moves. "Philadelphia sounds perfect," she said, her eyes lighting up. "I have that connection with my dad's old company there. It would give us a fresh start." Tim frowned, still grappling with the ramifications of their decision. "But my parents, they're not going to understand why we need to go." Brooke leaned in closer, her voice low and firm. "Tim, we can't let their expectations dictate our lives anymore. We need to think about what's best for us." "You're right," Tim sighed, rubbing his temples. It feels like we're abandoning them." Brooke reached across the table, her hand finding his. "We're not abandoning them, we're setting boundaries. They have to learn to stand on their own." As they discussed moving logistics, the door to the cafe swung open, and Brooke's father, Frank, walked in, his presence commanding yet warm. He spotted them and made his way over, a broad smile spreading across his face. "What are you 2 plotting?" he teased, settling into the seat beside them. "Just discussing the possibility of moving to Philadelphia," Brooke replied, her voice imbued with hope. Frank's eyes lit up with excitement. "That sounds like a fantastic idea. I can help with the move and even offer some financial support to get you started. You deserve a fresh start." Tim exchanged a look with Brooke, both surprised and relieved by his father-in-law's enthusiasm. "We really appreciate it, Frank," Tim said, his voice steadier now. "It'll be a big change, but we're ready." As they discussed potential neighborhoods and job opportunities, Brooke felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to dream of a life unencumbered by the constant pull of Tim's family. However, beneath the surface, uncertainty brewed. Would their in-laws truly accept their departure? Would David and Abby lash out? The thought nagged at her, but she pushed it aside. For now, it was enough to feel the thrill of independence begin to course through her veins. The day of the move arrived bright and crisp. boxes piled high in the moving truck reflected their shared anticipation and trepidation. Brooke and Tim stood in front of their old home, staring at the place they had spent so much time trying to make their own. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Brooke said, excitement bubbling within her as she surveyed the house. Memories of family dinners, arguments, and quiet moments of reflection flooded her mind. Tim nodded, the bittersweet nature of their departure evident on his face. "Yeah, it's like we're finally breaking free, but I worry about how they'll react when they realize we're gone." "Let them react," Brooke replied, her voice steady. "We need to focus on ourselves now." As they loaded the last of their belongings, Tim's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowning. "It's David. He says we've taken some family items without asking. He's upset." "Unbelievable," Brooke muttered, shaking her head. "What do they think we are, their personal bank?" Tim took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "I'll handle it. We can't let them drag us back in." The drive to Philadelphia felt surreal, a strange mix of liberation and anxiety coursing through them. As they entered the city, the skyline rose before them, promising opportunity and a fresh start. They arrived at their new high-rise condo, the sleek building standing tall against the backdrop of the bustling city. With Frank's help, they quickly settled in, unpacking boxes and arranging their new space. Brooke's heart swelled as she decorated the living room with touches of her personality, artwork, plants, and photographs that spoke of their journey. "This is our space," she said, gazing around with pride. "No more external pressures." But as they lay in bed that night, the city humming outside their window, the familiar unease crept in. The in-laws would not simply let them go without a fight, and the thought of their reaction loomed over them like a dark cloud. Days turned into weeks as Brooke and Tim settled into their new lives. They explored the city, enjoying romantic dinners and lazy Sundays in their cozy condo. For the first time, Brooke felt as if she was breathing freely, liberated from the burdens of her in-laws. But their peace was short-lived. One evening, Tim received a call from David that shattered their tranquility. "You think you can just up and leave, huh?" David's voice dripped with disdain. "Mom and Dad are struggling without your help. You've betrayed your family." Tim clenched his jaw, the weight of David's accusations heavy on his heart. "We didn't betray anyone. We needed to prioritize our lives, not be a safety net for your failures." Brooke watched Tim's face pale as the call ended. "What did he say?" "They're in a worse financial position than we thought," Tim admitted, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "And they're blaming us for it." Brooke placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We did what we had to do, Tim. We can't carry them forever." But doubt lingered in the air like a specter. Over the next few days, David and Abby's attempts to guilt-trip them became relentless. They claimed that Tim's parents could lose their home without their support, igniting a conflict that threatened to undo all their progress. As Brooke navigated her new job and tried to focus on building a life with Tim, their conversations turned increasingly tense. The issue of family loyalty hung over them like a dark cloud, and Brooke felt the cracks beginning to form in their relationship. "I thought moving would solve everything," she confessed one night, the weight of uncertainty resting heavily on her chest. "But it feels like we can't escape them, no matter where we go." Tim sighed, looking out over the city from their balcony. "I love you, Brooke, but this is tearing me apart. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions." The tension reached a boiling point when, during a family gathering, Tim's parents confronted them. Linda, with her sharp tongue, accused Brooke of leading Tim astray, claiming she was the reason for their abandonment. Brooke felt her heart race as she met Tim's gaze, their unspoken communication revealing their shared frustration and hurt. They had come too far to turn back now, but the emotional wounds of their families were deep, threatening to drown them in guilt and resentment. As tensions escalated, Brooke and Tim found themselves entangled in a web of accusations and resentments. David and Abby didn't hold back, launching a series of social media posts painting Tim and Brooke as selfish and uncaring. Each notification felt like a dagger, and the isolation of their new life loomed large. One evening, Tim received a call from his father, John. The tone was grave, a mixture of disappointment and frustration. "Tim, you have to understand. We're struggling here. Your mother can't handle it alone." Brooke watched Tim's face twist in agony, the weight of family loyalty pressing down on him. "Dad, we're trying to establish our lives. We can't keep bailing everyone out." "You don't get to decide that for us," John shouted, the strain of family expectations boiling over. "You've turned your back on us. This is your fault." As the call ended, Tim's face crumbled. "I didn't think it would come to this. I just wanted to break free, not destroy my family." Brooke stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him. You didn't destroy anything. You're standing up for us. You have every right to choose our happiness." Days passed, and the distance from Tim's family grew more profound. Brooke felt an eerie silence in their condo, the walls echoing their worries. They decided to take a trip to escape the chaos, a weekend away in the countryside to reconnect. As they drove, the scenery shifted from the concrete jungle of Philadelphia to rolling hills and open fields. They stopped at a quaint bed and breakfast, the charm of the place breathing new life into their relationship. But even amid the beauty, shadows of the past lingered. One evening, over a candlelit dinner, they talked about their dreams, their hopes, and what the future could hold. But just as they began to feel optimistic, Tim's phone buzzed with a text from David, demanding to know why they were running away instead of helping. "It's like they're haunting us," Tim said, frustration seeping into his voice. "Can't they just let us be?" Brooke squeezed his hand, determined to lift his spirits. "We're building our own life. They'll have to learn to deal with it. We can't let them control us anymore." However, that night, as they lay in bed, a sense of unease settled in. Despite their efforts, the weight of familial obligation remained, threatening to pull them back into the chaos they had tried so hard to escape. Returning from their weekend getaway, Brooke and Tim found their lives further entangled in the fallout of their decision. The once cozy condo felt heavy with the echoes of conflict, and their relationship began to fray under the strain. The next week, Tim received an unexpected visit from his parents. They stood at the door, faces grim and weary, and Brooke could sense the unresolved emotions swirling in the air. "Can we talk?" Linda asked, her voice soft but laced with tension. Tim exchanged a glance with Brooke before nodding reluctantly. They stepped into the living room, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Tim's parents took a seat, their expressions a mixture of regret and determination. "You've made your choice," John began, his tone heavy, "but we need to understand what this means for us all." Brooke felt a surge of frustration. "You have to understand that we needed this break. We're not trying to hurt anyone, we're trying to live our lives." Linda's voice cracked as she spoke. "We relied on you both for so long. It feels like betrayal. We thought family would always support one another." The words hung in the air, heavy with guilt. Tim's hands trembled at his sides, the struggle between love and obligation evident on his face. "We can't be your safety net anymore. You have to find a way to stand on your own." As the conversation unfolded, emotions flared. Linda cried, and John's frustration bubbled to the surface. Brooke felt the familiar pull of obligation tugging at her heartstrings. She tried to mediate, but the rift had deepened, and the raw wounds of the past bled into their current reality. Later that night, as they sat in the darkness of their living room, Brooke and Tim reflected on the encounter. "I didn't want them to come here like that," Tim said, his voice heavy with regret. "I never wanted to hurt them." Brooke turned to him, her expression softening. "But we have to prioritize us. We're a family now, too. We have to learn to say no." "Do you think they'll ever understand?" Tim asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "I hope so," Brooke replied. "But it's not our responsibility to make them see things our way." As they lay in bed that night, an uneasy silence enveloped them. The conflicts with Tim's family were far from over, but for the first time, Brooke felt a glimmer of hope. They were forging their own path, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could overcome the shadows of the past. Weeks rolled into months, and while Brooke and Tim found some stability in their new life, the tension with Tim's family simmered just below the surface. Despite their efforts to establish boundaries, David and Abby's resentment festered, culminating in an explosive confrontation. One evening, as Brooke was preparing dinner, Tim received another text from David demanding to meet. The message was sharp, filled with thinly veiled threats and accusations. "You can't just cut us off and expect everything to be fine. You'll regret this." Tim felt a surge of anger rise within him. What do they think? That they can just bully us into submission? Brooke watched him, her heart racing. "Don't let them get to you. You're doing what's best for us." But when David showed up at their door the next day, it was clear the confrontation was inevitable. Tim opened the door, his posture tense, as David stood there, a scowl etched across his face. "We need to talk," David snapped, pushing past Tim into the living room. "This isn't over." "What do you want, David?" Tim's voice was steady but strained. "You need to understand that we're not going back to that life." David's eyes blazed with anger. "You think you can just leave us behind? Mom and Dad are struggling. You're abandoning your family." Brooke stepped forward, her heart racing. "This isn't about abandoning anyone. We can't keep carrying your burdens. It's not fair to us." David's face twisted in anger. Fair. What's fair is family sticking together. You're both selfish. The argument escalated, voices rising in anger as David's frustration spilled over. You think you're better than us now? Just because you live in a nice condo, you've forgotten where you came from. Tim's fist clenched at his sides. This isn't about forgetting, it's about moving forward. We can't keep enabling your failures. Brooke watched the two men, feeling the heat of their anger suffocating her. She felt torn, wanting to defend Tim but also knowing David's hurt was real. You need to understand our perspective, David. We can't be your safety net anymore. Safety net? David laughed bitterly. You're too good for us now, huh? The confrontation reached a boiling point as words turned into accusations and emotions ran high. It was clear that the rift between them was deeper than any of them had anticipated. As David stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Brooke felt a chill settle in the air. That went well, she muttered, trying to inject humor into the situation. Tim sank into the nearest chair, his expression dark and defeated. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everything they've come to expect. We can't let them control our lives, Brooke replied, her voice firm. We're a team, Tim. We need to stick together. But as they faced the aftermath of the confrontation, the weight of unresolved emotions hung heavily between them. They had drawn their line in the sand, but the consequences of that line were far from over. The fallout from David's visit lingered in the air like a dark cloud. Tensions escalated as Tim's parents became more insistent on reconnecting, bombarding them with guilt-laden messages. Brooke felt her heart heavy as she navigated the emotional aftermath, wondering if their decision to leave was worth the price. One Saturday morning, Tim received an unexpected phone call from his mother. Tim, we need to talk. Can you come over? Tim glanced at Brooke, a mix of dread and resolve in his expression. I think I should. This has gone on long enough. Brooke nodded, her heart racing. I'll be here waiting for you. Just remember, you're doing this for us. As Tim walked into his parents' home, the familiar feelings of anxiety washed over him. Linda and John were seated at the kitchen table, their expressions grave. Thank you for coming, Linda said, her voice trembling. We've been thinking a lot about everything. Tim sat down, ready to confront the issues head-on. This can't go on like this. We can't keep bailing everyone out. John nodded, his eyes weary. We understand that you need to prioritize your life. We're sorry for how we reacted. Tim felt a flicker of hope. So you'll respect our choices. Linda hesitated before speaking. We want to, but it's hard for us. We thought you'd always be here for us. Not at the expense of our happiness, Tim replied, his tone firm but gentle. We'll always be family, but we can't be your lifeline. The conversation unfolded slowly, with both sides sharing their struggles and perspectives. As they spoke, Tim began to see the cracks in his parents' facade, the fear, the uncertainty that had pushed them to rely on him so heavily. When he finally returned home, he found Brooke waiting for him, her face filled with anticipation. How did it go? Tim sat down beside her, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over him. It was hard, but I think they're starting to understand. It might take time, but I finally feel like we're moving forward. Brooke smiled, a light of hope sparking in her eyes. I knew you could do it. We can't change the past, but we can shape our future. In the weeks that followed, the journey to healing wasn't easy, but both families began to mend. Tim's parents adjusted to their new reality, learning to seek support elsewhere while gradually reconnecting with Tim and Brooke on healthier terms. Tim and Brooke settled into their new life, embracing the joy of independence and the strength of their bond. The shadows of the past faded, replaced by the warmth of new beginnings. As they stood on their balcony overlooking the city, hand in hand, they felt the weight of their struggles lift. They had carved out a life filled with love, resilience, and hope. No longer bound by the expectations of the past, they looked forward to a future filled with possibilities, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Years later, Tim and Brooke gathered with their friends and family to celebrate their anniversary. The struggles of their past had transformed into lessons of love and strength, woven into the fabric of their lives. As they raised their glasses, surrounded by laughter and joy, Tim felt a profound sense of gratitude. To new beginnings, he toasted, his gaze meeting Brooke's. To the life we've built together, she added, her eyes sparkling with happiness. In that moment, surrounded by love and warmth, Tim and Brooke knew they had not just survived their challenges but had thrived, proving that even amidst chaos, love could conquer all. So if you love this story, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and comment below. Your interaction helps us grow.